The forest was silent. Only the sound of cold wind moved through the trees. Dark branches reached out like claws. Snow covered the ground. But near the edge of a deep cave, a small fire burned weakly. Next to the fire, a cage stood. Inside the cage sat a young alien girl. Her skin was pale blue and her eyes glowed softly in the dark. Chains held her wrists. Her clothes were torn and her hair was full of dust and leaves. Her name was Vera. She was left here as an offering. The village believed a terrible beast lived in the cave. Every year they gave the beast a sacrifice. They believed it kept them safe. This year they chose Vera. She was too weak, too different, too quiet. No one would miss her. Vera looked up at the sky. Clouds covered the stars. The night was long and cold. Her lips trembled. She remembered her mother's voice, soft and warm. One day you'll be safe, Vera. One day someone kind will find you. But her mother was gone now. She was alone. A deep roar came from inside the cave. Vera closed her eyes. Her small hands clenched the chains. The sound of heavy breathing echoed in the trees. The beast was coming. She whispered, "It's okay, just make it quick." But suddenly, bang! A sharp, loud sound cut through the forest. Then another. Bang! Bang! Vera opened her eyes in fear. It wasn't the beast. It was something else. Something or someone was running toward the cage. From the trees stepped a man. He was tall, with dark brown clothes and snow on his boots. His face was hard, but his eyes were full of fire. He held something in his hands, a weapon she didn't recognize. He saw her and stopped. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the man rushed to her cage and kicked it open. "Can you walk?" he asked. Vera didn't understand his words, but she saw his hand reaching for her. She shook her head. He didn't waste time. He pulled out a small tool from his belt and broke the chains on her wrists. Vera fell forward. The man caught her. His arms were warm. She looked up at him with wide eyes. Another roar came from the cave, louder this time. The ground shook. The man picked her up. "No time," he said. "Hold on." And she did. He ran fast, through trees and snow. The beast chased behind them. Heavy footsteps crushed branches, but the man was fast and smart. He dropped metal balls as he ran. They exploded behind him, slowing the monster. After many minutes, he slid down a hill into a hidden path covered by ice and thick trees. He stopped. Vera could barely breathe. She looked up at him. He was panting, sweat on his face. He looked down at her. "You're safe now." She didn't know what the words meant, but his voice was calm, his touch gentle. She wanted to speak, but her throat was dry. Still, she whispered, "Thank you." The man set up a fire in a cave much smaller than the monster's. He gave her a warm coat. He gave her food, real food. She hadn't eaten in days. He handed her water and helped her sit. Vera stared at him. "Why?" He pointed to himself. "Jake," then pointed to her. She whispered, "Vera." Jake smiled. "Vera." She nodded slowly. She wanted to ask more, but her eyes were heavy. He moved to the entrance of the cave, weapon in hand, and sat guard. She watched him until sleep took her. In her dreams, she heard the beast again. But this time, she wasn't afraid, because someone had come for her, not to hurt her, but to save her. When Vera opened her eyes, the fire was still burning. The cave was quiet, warm, safe. She blinked slowly, trying to remember where she was. Then she saw the man, Jake, sitting by the entrance. His back was straight, his weapon resting across his knees. He hadn't slept. He was guarding her. Vera sat up slowly, her body sore. Her arms still showed marks from the chains, but she was free now. Jake turned when he heard her move. He smiled. Tired but kind smile. "You're awake," he said softly. She didn't understand the words, but she felt the meaning in his voice. He handed her a small cup of warm liquid. She sniffed it. It smelled strange, but sweet. She drank it. Her body relaxed. Jake got up and walked to a corner of the cave. He opened a small metal box and pulled out a blanket, a can of food, and a data pad. Vera watched carefully. She had never seen a human before. She had heard stories, that they were dangerous, cold, selfish. But Jake didn't seem like that. He gave her the blanket and sat down again. His fingers tapped the datapad screen. Images appeared. He turned it so she could see. One picture was of Earth. Another showed a monster, like the one from the cave. Then another picture appeared. A small house in a snowy forest. Jake pointed at the house. Then he pointed at her. He made a gesture like building something. Vera didn't fully understand, but she felt something inside. Hope. Was he offering to take her there? Suddenly Jake stood. He looked out of the cave. Vera followed his eyes. There were footprints in the snow, fresh ones, not beast prints. Boots. Jake turned to her and said something serious, his voice low, firm. Then, he handed her a piece of food and motioned for her to stay quiet. He stepped outside. Vera's heart pounded. She moved closer to the wall of the cave and hid in the shadows. She remembered what her people used to say. Sometimes the real danger is not the beast, but the ones who send it. Outside, Jake moved silently. Snow fell lightly. The footprints led to a small hill, then vanished. Jake crouched low, eyes scanning. Suddenly, click, a weapon aimed at his head. "Don't move," a voice growled. Jake didn't flinch. Another figure stepped from behind a tree, then another. 3 men. Humans. But not like Jake. They wore dirty armor and had strange marks on their faces. "You seen a blue girl around here?" one asked. "Worth a fortune, you know." Jake didn't answer. He stepped back. "You're protecting her?" The man laughed. "Come on, Jake. Don't be stupid. She's just alien trash." Jake raised his weapon slowly. The others laughed. But then, crack. One man dropped to the ground. Vara had picked up a frozen branch and hit him from behind. The other 2 turned in shock. Jake moved fast, too fast. He took them both down in seconds. Silence returned. Jake looked at Vera. She stood there, shaking, still holding the branch. I'm sorry," she whispered, not knowing if he understood. But he stepped forward and gently took the branch from her hands. He smiled again. This time it was a proud smile. "You're not weak," he said. "You're brave." Vera didn't understand the words, but she smiled too. That night, as they moved to a new hiding place, Jake pointed at the stars. He showed her a map on his datapad. He marked a place far away, a hidden cabin, deep in the mountains. Vara looked at him and then nodded. She wanted to go there, not because it was safe, but because someone kind would be there with her. The snow was heavier now. Vera walked beside Jake, her small feet struggling to keep up. He had wrapped her in thick clothes and gave her boots that were too big, but warm. Every few steps, he looked back to check on her. They were heading toward the mountains, away from the village, away from the men who wanted to take her. But not far behind. Someone was following. Jake stopped suddenly. He knelt and touched the snow. Vera stepped closer and saw it too. Tracks, fresh ones. Not animals. Boots, again. Jake looked up at the trees, his eyes sharp, his jaw tight. Without a word, he grabbed her hand. They moved faster. By the time the sun was low, they reached a rocky slope. Halfway up, Jake stopped in front of a thick wall of vines. He pushed them aside. Behind the vines, hidden, in the mountain, was an old wooden door. He opened it. Inside was a small cave cabin. Warm, dry. There was a bed, old supplies, and a hidden heater made from scrap. He led Vera in and quickly closed the door. "You'll be safe here," he said softly, locking the door. For the first time in days, Vera smiled. She sat by the fire while Jake unpacked food. He gave her something soft and sweet. She ate slowly, still watching him. She wanted to ask him many things. Why he was alone. Why he helped her. Why he looked so sad sometimes when he thought she wasn't watching. But she didn't know the words. So instead, she offered him her piece of food. He smiled and took it. That night, Jake didn't sleep. He sat near the door, weapon across his lap, and Vera had a dream. In her dream, she was back in the cage. The fire was dying. The beast was coming. But this time, the villagers stood around her laughing. No one helped. Then Jake appeared. But this time he wasn't alone. There were shadows behind him. Shadows with red eyes. Watching. Waiting. Vera woke up, heart pounding. She looked around. The fire was still burning. Jake was awake, sitting quietly. But then, he looked at her and put a finger to his lips. Shh, she listened. Footsteps, soft, slow. Outside the door, Jake stood in motion for her to hide behind the bed. She obeyed. He moved to the door and waited. A long silence. Then, bang. The door shook. Someone was trying to break in. Jake didn't move. Another bang. A crack appeared in the wood, then a voice. "Give us the girl and we let you live, human." Jake didn't answer. He loaded his weapon and whispered, "Come and try." Vera watched from behind the bed. She was scared, but not like before. This time someone was fighting for her. Because she mattered. The door burst open. Jake fired, a flash of light. One shadow fell. Another came in swinging a blade. Jake dodged and tackled him to the ground. Vera saw one more shadow sneaking in. She grabbed the metal can Jake had used earlier. Heavy and round, she threw it with all her strength. It hit the shadow's head. He stumbled, right into Jake's strike. Silence. Then only heavy breathing. 3 men, all down. Jake locked the door again. His arm was bleeding. Vera rushed to him. He smiled weakly. Not bad aim. She didn't understand, but she touched his wound gently. He winced. She tore a piece of her sleeve and pressed it on the cut. Jake looked at her, surprised. Then nodded. "You're full of fight," he said. Vera smiled softly. They stayed close, to the fire that night. Jake's head leaned back against the wall. Vera sat beside him, eyes wide open, still watching the door. Neither spoke. But they didn't have to. In this cold, wild world, they had each other now, and together, they had survived the shadows. The storm outside was getting worse. The cold wind howled through the cracks in the mountain. Snow slammed against the hidden door of the small cabin. But inside, the fire burned, and the 2 lives sitting close to it were silent, alert, and safe. For now. Jake's wound had stopped bleeding. Vera had done her best to clean it with snow and wrap it tight. She sat beside him, her small blue hands trembling. But not from the cold. She was thinking. About the shadows. About why they kept coming. And what they really wanted from her. The next morning, Jake stood up and checked the door. It was still holding. But he didn't relax. His eyes moved to the back wall of the cabin. It was made of stone. But in the corner, half buried under tools and blankets, was a hatch. Vera noticed it too. She tilted her head. Jake looked at her. Then, slowly he walked over and opened it. It creaked. A hidden staircase went down, into the dark. Jake grabbed a light and motioned for her to follow. They descended together. The air grew colder, heavier. At the bottom was a metal door. Jake pushed it open. Vera gasped. Inside was a small underground room, clean and untouched. The walls had drawings. Strange machines sat quietly. And in the center was something glowing. A pod. Vera stepped closer. Inside the pod was a figure, blue skin. Wings. Eyes closed. Frozen in time. It looked like her. Jake walked to a console and wiped off the dust. His fingers moved carefully over the buttons. A screen lit up. Specimen 39. Status, stasis, protected species. Farah pointed at the frozen figure. She whispered something in her language. Jake looked at her. You know her? He asked softly. She nodded. She's my sister. Jake stared at her in shock. So did they take her sister too? Did they lock her here? But why? Why would someone hide this? Then Jake noticed something else, an old file on the screen. He opened it. It was a report, a mission report from long ago. It said, Specimen 39 shows rare ability. Can communicate with deep space creatures. Must be protected. Relocate to secret vault. Survivors of her species are few. Remaining child escaped capture. Jake read it twice, then looked at Vera. She was the remaining child, and this frozen girl was the last of her family. Vera walked to the pod. She pressed her hand against the glass. Tears filled her eyes. Jake stepped beside her. We'll find a way to wake her, he promised. She didn't understand the words, but she nodded, because something in his voice made her believe him. They returned to the cabin above. Jake locked the hatch again. But now, things had changed. Vera wasn't just a lost alien girl anymore. She was a key to something bigger, and Jake had a feeling. The men hunting her knew it too. That night, the fire crackled low. Jake sat by the window, watching snow fall like quiet ghosts. Vera lay close to the fire, her eyes on the ceiling. Neither spoke. But the weight of the secret below them hung in the room like a shadow. Tomorrow things would change. Vara couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the pod, the frozen body inside, her sister, alive, but not awake. She wanted to break the glass. She wanted to scream. But she knew it wouldn't help. She didn't know how the pod worked. And the human, Jake, was just as confused. Still, there was something else in that room. She had seen it before they left. A small, glowing panel on the wall shaped like a circle. It had strange alien writing on it, and it pulsed like a heartbeat. The next morning, before Jake woke up, Vera opened the hatch again and climbed down the stairs alone. The air was cold, but the room below was glowing softly. She walked to the circle panel, touched it. Suddenly, the lights in the room brightened. A voice spoke in her language. Are you ready, Vara? She froze. The voice sounded familiar. It was her sister's voice. But how? Jake woke with a start. He looked around. Vera? No answer. He rushed to the hatch, heart pounding. Downstairs, he found her standing in front of the glowing panel, staring. She didn't turn when he called her name. She whispered. She left me a message. Jake stepped closer. What kind of message? Vera turned slowly, eyes wide and full of tears. She said, The beasts are coming. Jake blinked. What beasts? Vera pointed at the frozen pod. She used to hear them. In her dreams. Big ones. Dark ones. That fly in space. She told me they sleep under the mountains and someone woke them up. Jake stared at the pod. Was that why the hunters wanted Vara? Not just because she was rare, but because she could sense these creatures, or worse, control them. Suddenly, the console beeped. A new message appeared on the screen. Warning, vault compromised, creature activity detected near Sector 3. Evacuate immediately. Jake's blood turned cold. He looked at Vera. We need to leave. Now. They packed quickly. Jake filled his bag with food, tools, and a small battery from the console. He didn't know what it powered, but something told him it might help later. Vera didn't ask questions, she just followed. Before leaving, she touched the pod once more. I'll come back, she whispered. I promise. Then they sealed the hatch and stepped out into the snowstorm. The mountain shook beneath them. Vera stumbled. Jake caught her. From the far side of the slope, a low roar echoed across the ice. It didn't sound like a beast. It sounded like many. They reached the tree line. Jake pulled out a small map. He pointed to an old bunker far east. If we reach here, we might find help. Vara nodded, but her eyes kept looking back at the mountain. Suddenly, a black shape flew through the sky, big, winged, silent. Jake and Vera ducked under the trees. The shadow passed overhead. Jake whispered, "Was that one of them?" Vera nodded slowly. "It's awake." Jake gripped his weapon tighter. They had just gone from hiding to running for their lives. But now it wasn't just about staying safe. It was about stopping something bigger. That night, they camped under a rocky overhang. Jake started a small fire. Vara sat close, knees tucked under her chin. Jake looked at her. "You're not just some lost girl, are you?" She didn't answer. He smiled. "You're braver than most soldiers I've met." Vara looked up. And for the first time, she smiled back. The wind had changed. It no longer howled, it screamed. Jake and Vara were still moving through the frozen woods, pushing toward the old bunker Jake had marked on his map. But even he knew. They were running out of time. Behind them, the sky wasn't dark anymore. It was burning. Flashes of red lit up the clouds. Distant roars echoed like thunder. Snow melted where it shouldn't. And something heavy stirred beneath. The land. Vara stumbled again, grabbing Jake's arm. "I feel them," she whispered. Jake turned to her. "The beasts," she nodded. "They wake each other up, like a chain. One rises, then another." Jake looked up. A shape moved through the red clouds. Huge wings, long tail. A screech that made his blood run cold. "That one's not hiding anymore," he said. They reached the edge of a steep hill. Far below, half buried in snow and ice, was the old bunker. Jake pointed. There. But between them and safety stood a creature, not flying, not roaring. It was crouched in the snow like a silent predator, tall, black. Its skin shimmered with frost. It hadn't seen them yet. Jake crouched. "We go around, but..." Vara stepped forward. "Wait." Jake grabbed her arm. "What are you doing?" Vara stared at the creature. "I know this one." Jake blinked. "You know it?" She nodded. "From the songs. My sister used to tell me. This kind listens. If it hears the old words." She took a shaky breath and began to hum. The sound was soft, gentle, like the wind before a storm. The creature's ears twitched, its head turned. Yellow eyes locked onto Vara. Jake raised his weapon, but Vara held up her hand. The beast didn't growl. It stepped forward, slowly, and bowed. Jake's mouth dropped open. "What the hell?" Vara turned to him. "It remembers. My people once led them." They walked, slowly, past the creature. It watched them, but did nothing. Then it turned and walked away into the snow. Jake exhaled deeply. "That's insane." Vara smiled faintly. The others might not listen, but this one did. They reached the bunker door. Jake used a code panel, praying it still worked. Beep. Beep. Click. It opened. Inside, the bunker was dark and dusty, but safe. Jake found an old generator. With the battery from the pod room, it powered up. Lights flickered. On-screens came to life. And on one of them was a warning. Beast patterns detected, approaching major cities. Civilian destruction, 68%. Countermeasure, unknown. Jake stared at it, then looked at Vara. "This isn't just about you anymore." Vara's eyes were wide. "I can stop them, if I reach them first." Jake shook his head. "How?" She hesitated. "My sister was the key. I think I am too." Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from above. The bunker shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Jake rushed to the monitor. A flying beast had landed above them. Its claws dug into the ice. It had found them. Jake grabbed his weapon. Vara stepped beside him. She looked up. "I will try to speak." Jake looked at her. "And if it doesn't listen?" She didn't answer, but her eyes were full of fire now, not fear. Outside, the sky cracked open. Wings spread across the horizon. Vera walked toward the exit. Jake followed, heart pounding. Because this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the war between humans, beasts, and the forgotten song of an alien child. Snow blasted through the trees. The wind wasn't just cold, it carried screams now. From far cities, from human outposts, from everywhere the beasts had reached. But inside the mountain bunker, one small alien girl stood still. Vera, bare feet, on metal. Eyes fixed on the hatch door. Outside, the winged creature waited. Jake stood behind her, weapon in hand. "Vera, are you sure?" She nodded. "I have to try." She stepped out. The cold hit her instantly, but the beast was right there. Huge, black scales, eyes glowing orange like fire trapped in glass. It didn't attack. It watched. Vera took a deep breath and began to sing. The song wasn't loud. It was broken, soft, ancient. Her voice shook, but the melody rose through the storm. The creature tilted, its head. A rumble came from its chest, deep, confused. Then another sound answered it. A second beast landed on a distant cliff. Then a third, then more. They formed a half-circle around her, all silent, all listening. Jake stood at the hatch, barely breathing. He whispered, "Come on. Come on." Suddenly, the biggest creature, the one with red markings, stepped forward. It growled. The ground shook. Vera didn't stop singing. The red beast roared. Jake shouted, "Vera!" But Vera didn't run. She took one more step toward it. The beast charged. Jake ran. He didn't care if he died. He would not let her be crushed. But right before the creature reached her, it stopped. Its claws dug into the ice. It lowered its head. The others followed. Every single one bowed. The song had worked. Jake dropped to his knees. Vera stood in front of the monster. Her small hand touched its nose. Tears ran down her cheeks, not from fear, but relief. Later that night, fires burned in the distance, cities broken, skies red. But where the beasts once flew, they now stood still, guarding mountains, watching humans from afar. They didn't destroy anymore. They waited, listened, because a girl had sung to them, and they had remembered. In a warm tent, Jake sat by the fire. Vera slept, curled up in a thick blanket. She looked so small, so peaceful, yet she had stopped a war. Jake smiled. She wasn't a weapon. She was a bridge. He reached for his journal and wrote. She closed her eyes, waiting for the beast to eat her, but instead she tamed them and saved us all.